The title for my convention address is Living Stones, Building the Beloved Community. From 1 Peter 2:5, we hear, like living stones, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Dear beloved of Bethlehem, Diocesan Convention is our time to look at our own spiritual house, to look at our foundation, trusting that like living stones, we are being built into a spiritual house with Jesus as our sure foundation. Now allow me to offer two additional scriptural texts that'll help form the basis of my remarks this day. From the prophet Isaiah in chapter 51, we hear, "You who seek, look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the quarry from which you were dug." And from Psalm 118, "The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone." We are stones, not yet fully quarried, still adding sediment, yet we are living stones. This notion of living stones has stayed with me as I have traversed my way around the diocese, spending time with you and your congregations, and also while at General Convention and in England at the Lambeth Conference. I recall our presiding bishop at General Convention in Baltimore stated, "Remember where you came from. Remember your baptism. Remember this Jesus. Remember and be remade as God's new creation." Now, while at General Convention, I was trying to find my footing while crisscrossing a cavernous convention center in Baltimore, and those who were there know just how big it was. And I was trying to navigate this space with an injured and throbbing instep, my left foot. I somehow heard it, most likely while taking vigorous walks in the months prior to pound out a few urgent concerns. But there it was, a constant reminder. And even while at Lambeth, I longed for tender steps, often needing to rest and to put my feet up, for I was ever more keenly aware of my own footing or lack thereof. I recall the Archbishop of Jerusalem, Hossam Noam, in a talk at the Lambeth Conference, and I quote, "Every day," he said, "I walk in the footsteps of Jesus, literally and metaphorically. And yet it can be an alienating place among the sacred stones. We go to the Holy Land to see the dead stones, the churches. But we are the living stones." He concluded, "I often wonder, how do we become living stones, walking in the footsteps of Jesus?" As I prepared to address you at this, the 151st Diocesan Convention, I also returned to our foundation, our diocesan footings, so to speak. And I see them as the Episcopal Church's commitment to the beloved community, a commitment that guides the work of many faith communities and denominations toward racial reconciliation, healing, and justice. I also considered our 5 priorities put forth from our envisioning process and our ongoing discipleship and advocacy for the most vulnerable. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once wrote, "The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community, so that when the battle is over, a new relationship comes into being. Thus, the road to the beloved community starts with each of us. And before us is the injustice that exists in our systems of law, education, healthcare, housing, law enforcement, mass incarceration, and other structures. The creation of the beloved community is not about us or them. It is not about demeaning or shaming the other. It is calling forth the good within each of us and befriending those who differ. The beloved community, I believe, is that reality where reconciliation is always the end goal, where we live a life ensuring that all creation can live a safe and just existence, and where resources are shared for the betterment of everyone. Most of all, it is where love does not seek anything in return. Dear siblings in Christ, the beloved community is for all of us, and it starts with us. It is the essence of being living stones. As 1 Peter tells us, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house. And at the heart, becoming living stones, I believe, is interconnected with our own holiness. It is becoming more of who God created me to be, and my responding in love to those around me. Forgiving, healing, and expanding the arc of justice. Let me speak hard truth. Presently, we are living in days of growing division and violence. Wars are raging, institutions are slowly crumbling, and we have lost trust in the highest of offices. Civility is hanging by a thread, and our most basic human rights are under attack. As I have been sharing around the diocese, there is trouble ahead. There's trouble ahead. Inside our walls and outside our red doors are folk thirsting for hope and a better way of living and loving. If there is any time in history for the church to speak and act boldly in love, it is now. So I often say, God has created us and formed us for this moment. Let us build the beloved community. This past spring, I reviewed with Diocesan Council and the Standing Committee learnings and accomplishments from our envisioning process. Many of these insights were gleaned from a staff retreat that we held earlier in the year, and it was an opportunity to take stock of our spiritual home, to check our foundation, and to celebrate all that has unfolded over these last 4 years as we look to the future. I want you to hear some of the conclusions of those who participated, members of our leadership bodies, and I quote, "We have tackled difficult challenges head on." Another said, "It feels like we're on solid financial footing." Another said, getting at the issues of struggling congregations has been critical, and giving voice to more people has been transformative. Another said, it feels like our culture is shifting. We also heard that the canon missioner approach is a future-focused model, but do parishioners fully understand it? Another said improving compensation and benefits across the diocese must be a priority. We need that task force. And also there was some caution. We have momentum now. Is reunification necessary? At our pre-convention gatherings, and I thank you for so many who joined us, we also heard, when will our stockpiled resources dry up? Do we have a longer-term plan? Others offered, would the geography of a reunified diocese be too daunting? Would we ever see our bishop? And giving the 8.5% cost of living increase this year, how will we pay for this in the years ahead? Let me share words that were offered by our treasurer, Libby House. I want you to listen closely to her report today as well. But I believe it was during one of our gatherings, it may have been at convention or at one of our council meetings, Libby stated, it is from a position of financial strength that we enter into conversations with the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania and explore the possibility of reunification. It is our longer-term plan. It is because of your efforts over the last 4 years, your sacrifice, your perseverance in the most daunting COVID moment, that we're able to proudly say that our foundation, our spiritual house is strong. And from this vantage point, we must decide how to embrace our future with passion, with hope, with expectation. The Pentecost dawns moment that we inaugurated in May of 21. That hopeful envisioning of a new future has included the hiring of new staff members and holding what I believe is the Episcopal Church's first ever ministry fair. And this led to 18 congregations and 1 Lutheran calling new clergy, and 4 or so who will soon follow. I want to name them. I want to name your new leadership. You can wave when I call you out. From mediator in Allentown, Dale Granfield. From the Cathedral of the Nativity in Bethlehem, Barry Hart and Marianne Philbrook, and soon their next dean. From Trinity Easton, Barbara Harrison Seward, and soon to arrive, the assistant, Donna Lockhart. St. Margaret's in Emmaus, Laura Howe. From St. James and St. George in German, Howard Stringfellow. From Grace Honesdale, J.O. Rear. From St. Paul's Montrose, Liz Grahowski. From St. Thomas Morgantown, Millard Cook. St. Mark's Moscow, Tyler Perry. St. Martin in the Field, Mountaintop, Charlie Warwick. Trinity Pottsville, St. James Schuylkill, St. John's Ashland and Holy Apostles, St. Clair, North Parish, Kurt Kovalovich. St. John's Lutheran and Redeemer Sayer, Scott Harvey. St. Albans, Sinking Spring, Michelle Moyer. Christ Stroudsburg, Bruce Gow. And Christ Tawanda, Betsy Sentigar. Congratulations. What a blessing. These calls represent a 50% shift in the 30+ diocesan parochial clergy. We now have 16 full-time clergy and 7 clergy who are serving 2 or more congregations. Kurt, I believe, leads with 4, and Charlie's right behind with 3. 16 or so congregations are being led by supply priests, deacons, and lay leaders. This in itself is a dramatic shifting in just the last 4 years. Also, let me highlight, in 2022, we came together for Gather 22, an event keynoted by Dean Kelly Brown Douglas of EDS at Union. We enjoyed workshops led by diocesan leaders, bringing formation for all to the forefront. Gather 23 is just around the corner. I want to thank Judy for our Racial Justice and Reconciliation Task Force report that we'll hear in a few moments. We applaud your efforts on behalf of justice. I also wish to recognize the leaders of our newly planted Latinx congregations and our mission resources, finance and investment committees for their steady leadership. I also want to thank Deacon Charlie Barabo and those who lead our efforts in Kajukeji, South Sudan. Let me just say what a privilege it was for Patty and for me to meet Bishop Pogo, the new Secretary General of the Anglican Communion, and his wife this past summer. These partnership efforts from the earliest days live on. While at Lambeth, I reconnected with Bishop Emmanuel and also with Bishop Joseph Abu of the neighboring diocese, where one of our schools is located. Their gratitude for all that you've done over the years and continue to do was overwhelming. I so long to return to Kajukeji, hopefully in 2024. Rectors from our largest congregations have begun gathering together monthly with Canon Barbara to dig deeper into the 5 priorities and discover what it means to be vital in their particular context. Similarly, Canon Melinda has begun to visit congregations in the northern regions of the diocese and to engage conversations about community partnerships, church fellowships, and also strengthen convocation efforts. They're looking at new offerings, such as finance and audit trainings. And as I have returned to a more regular schedule of visitations, I am rediscovering the many outreach and mission partnerships that you've kept strong or forged anew across our diocese. Feeding programs, homeless ministries, daycare and educational support, outreach to refugees, support for seniors, feeding programs at nearby schools, ecumenical partnerships, just to name a few. Your presence in your communities is stunning. Pentecost dawns. You are surely living stones. In closing, I wish to say a few final words about the resolutions that are before us this day. I am so hopeful about our future. The budget that has been carefully crafted to respond to the financial uncertainty of this moment also bespeaks of the wise and prudent stockpiling of resources over the past 4 years. Rest assured, we will respond to the changes and even trouble ahead with the same careful approach, placing the needs of our congregations and our most vulnerable members first. We can and will do this together. We will continue to tend to familiar and wily vines, as well as plant new seedlings. Our Latinx communities and the St. Barnabas Center in Kutztown remind us of the vibrancy that comes when we reach out in faith and follow our passions. please consider carefully your standing committee, Bishop Audrey Scanlon, and my call to enter into a season of exploration, discovering the possibility of a new future as a reunified diocese. We are hewn from the same rock, and upon this rock, with Jesus as our cornerstone, we will continue to find our footing. Join me in becoming more of the beloved community, hopeful and justice-focused voices in this conflicted time. We are living stones. Let us walk together in love.